Well, your
having.
film follows Dr. Amani Bailor, who is a pediatrician and the first female hospital manager in Syria, and she's stayed behind to work in this underground hospital called the Cave. So, can you talk about how you first heard of her story?
In Syria, they start the Russian and the Syrian regime targeting intentionally the hospital, and that forces the doctors around the country to move the hospital underground and start to build those literally called hospitals um, to protect the potential like victims and protect themselves. And a huge number of this doctor left the country, especially after the first time the first Syrian regime launched the chemical attack that killed in one night 1,500 using the nerve gas, sarin, and different chemical materials. And one of this is few doctor left was Dr. Amani, and everyone started to hear about her, and she was working undercover. And she left her family behind and left everything behind her and stayed in that place. And the doctors in that area, which is called Eastern Ghouta, which is outstretch of Damascus, just the capital of Syria, just like around 5 kilometers from this 10 kilometers from the central of Damascus. I was already starting the documentation in Syria, the civil demonstration in Syria in 2011, and being jailed by the Syrian regime first time, and tortures, and then I get out of the prison, then I start to document, continue working, and then I jailed again. I capture, I jailed again, and get out. Then I start to document the event of the chemical attacks, where I start to see the doctor, including Dr. Amani, we discovered through the process that she was the first Syrian to manage or to lead an hospital in the entire history of Syria, the recorded history. And to give a note about that, in Syria was this dictatorship Syrian regime, which was as a country being leading by two presidents, the father and the son, the Assad father and the Assad son, the last 100 years, and they all the time been faking their elections, winning 100% of the countries, jailing every voices that against them, closing the country from any voices to come out of that. And the revolution in Syria came with the different voices, and started people see each other and get to know each other, and that make them shocked from each other and their opinions. And we knew that, knew that Dr. Amani and start to do all of this is feminism, feminist movement, bringing a lot of women, empower them inside the hospital and give them space to work and to be themselves and to have identity, to separate from their family if they want, and this is hospital turned to be like an identity for them more than anything. So I feel like this is many things inside one story, and we've been naturally documented this. It's like we wasn't expecting that we will end this footage in a films. We were just like naturally we start like to feel that we have to document in this because this is good work for many things, evidence for war crimes, documented for history, that what's happening in that, to tell it for a different for the next generation of Syria. Look again, close look to what's happening in our countries in that moment. Yeah.
What were the logistics of filming in a war-ravaged country like that? Because you weren't able to go into the cave, right? So how did that all like happen with like the filming inside the cave?
As I said, in 2013, I started documenting the cave wasn't that huge and big. There was just a small a medical point, and I started documented by myself. And then I couldn't continue because I was like already jailed, captured, kidnapped by the Syrian regime. So I left to northern of Syria. Northern of Syria, it's completely a copy paste from what's happening in Eastern Ghouta. There is also like a different cave hospital. So I established a team of three cinematographers who start like to document it. I was documenting in the same northern of Syria, the same situation, following different doctors also. We didn't know what we're gonna do, but it was like kind of, this is a mission that we have to deal with that. And I was, during that I was doing Last Minute in Aleppo. The material of the cave was start before Last Minute in Aleppo, but we couldn't get it out because Dr. Amani and her team working undercover, and there was mostly the few doctors who left behind, and the Russians, the Syrian regime, and different terrorist group, they was targeting doctor, and they want to kill them because they want to cut any resources for the lives there. So I was documented in countryside of Aleppo and Idlib, which is the northern of Syria, and sending the materials to my team there, and they send me the material back to following the same step with that. The different cave hospital is same design because it's a simple design, you know, like it's not like something big. It's just shelter underground, and they try to extend it, and then the doctor managed to build like a kind of a beacon in that space for the people. What's mostly complicated more in Eastern Ghouta, which is start to be like they moved the whole city underground. There was 400,000 people sieged completely. You can't get in and you can't get out completely. There's no resources for food. The electricity was through generation or through the sun. The water that was the city already, like this area was rich with the water and with the green planets, and these people that was using these materials. Mostly we wasn't have a big equipment. We was like have a 5D Mark II and 60D camera, and it wasn't have an access for batteries to charge the cameras, but those small equipment help us so much, like to capture the moment, and it's hard, like to move to my cinematographer to move back and into the cave because they have not to stay there in this place because it's just for victims, doctors, and they have like to deal with a lot of refugees also in this situation. In my side in northern Syria I have to move between a place to place every 3 days because I can't stay in the place because I will be kidnapped or will be killed already. Like people, they know me. I have a a Kurdish mother, so it's like a little bit. There is a sensitive situations about the Kurds and Arab inside Syria, and that rise more dangerous and threat on that, especially if they know also like if they know that this footage is about documenting war crimes and about like doing something could expose what the situation right there. And I don't want to also put the people, the area where I'm staying in dangers, because normally I have a friend who was like make an investigative story about the chemical attacks and the Syrian regime bombed his family with a warplane and killed his mother and sister in one time because just to make investigative story. So it was so scary in these situations in dealing with the material. The material was being uploaded through internet satellite to my side, and I do the same things until the Syrian regime bombed the Russian bombed the internet satellite. How we know that Russian? Because the conversation through walkie-talkie between the payload, the Russian payload, about bombing the
Oh,
places.
okay.
And this was part from the documentation, the conversations between the payload in the Arabic and the Russians, and the tracking of, there is like the radio tracking for the payload. It was part of this documentation that we collected in this way, like to could be like a part from this from different in different way, like to put this as evidence for what's going on in the country. Anyway, so 3 months is the last 3 months is we couldn't have connections between us, between
No-
me
no
and this,
internet
no
connection.
internet, no
So
way.
how did you get the files?
When they what's called evacuations, when they first displaced the people from Eastern Ghouta, when the Eastern Ghouta taken by Russians, the people came to northern of Syria, to where I was filming. So I continue filming with Dr. Amani there, and I take the materials, which was including the documentation for chemical attacks. Was
Yeah, that's in the movie.
yes, exactly, the chemical attacks, that the reason behind Britain's, France, and United States launch an attack in that day on Syria, when he was Donald Trump joking about the cake in that day of people was dying from the chemical attacks. So I smuggled this. I put the materials on Flash because I was also scary, because Turkey and Russia, they have conversations,
Yeah.
and I was scary about this materials because it's materials, obviously it's.
Of a chemical attack.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. It's like show you a lot of things, show you like this is crime, and there is war crime, and there is people who are behind it. It's very clear about it. So I smuggled them to Turkey, from Syria to Turkey, then from Turkey to Denmark.
Wow.
Yeah,
And that's where you finished the film.
this is where I was editing the film. Yeah.
Well, the film also deals with sexism and misogyny, because this husband of a patient comes in and just accuses Dr. Amani of not doing her job, and he says women should be at home and cook. And a male coworker has to come in and say that the staff voted for Dr. Amani to be the manager, and she's like, no one tells me what to do, which was awesome. So how important was it for you to just not to show her just saving lives, but to be like an inspiration to other women who may be from patriarchal societies?
You know, she was an inspiration for other women. You can't close your eyes on the thing, which is like it's morally conflicted in that situation. A man who is suffering from doesn't have any medicine, and he's angry, and he's victims himself, but he was blackmailing her and using his victimism against her, which is like this is can compare with the many situations around the world that happening victim on victims. I can like size it in this way. So and Dr. Amani, she was active. She was very strong. She's gifted person to decide about what she want to be, and left behind her family. She was from well-being family, and she don't need to do anything. Her family open her clinic, and good clinic in the city, and she can work without that. But she want to do this. She want to left everything, and she want to do this. She want to stand next to the victims. And during that, she was trying to get more women to work. She was aware enough with this way. She growing up, seeing in front of her and the injustice situation for women. This is the most important things in the middle of that. The change should be in every single place. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's a spoiler, but at the end of the movie, Dr. Mani leaves. So do you know where she is now? What's she up to?
Yeah, Dr. Amani now, after she came to northern Syria and continue with her, shoot with her 500 hour also. We already shot 500 hour in Eastern Ghouta, and then in northern of Syria, 500 hour. And northern of Syria actually also, like to get a lot of people, there is a lot of foreign country involving there. There is Turkish, there's Russian, there's Saudi Arabia, there is Qatar, there is so many countries inside that country playing roles. There's a tourist group, there is a bomb, there's explosion car. It's open on dangerous, and there is 3 million people sieged in that area, open for different dangers. There is a huge, huge like a refugee camp for the people who've been displaced from other cities in Syria, but being destroyed by the war, like from Raqqa, from Homs and other cities, and Aleppo. So all of them, they end in a refugee camps that if you look, you don't see the end for that refugee camp. So she ended in one of this refugee camp after she couldn't find to work again in a good place as she want, because she decided that I have to do this and I have to bring women with me in this hospital. She was jumping between a couple of Cave Hospital, and I was following her. Then she left to Turkey, to Gaziantep. She met a nice man, and they get married and living in small apartment in Turkey, close to the Syrian border. Unfortunately, she not allowed to practice her her work as well. So she managed through making this film. She managed like to establish a fund called Al Amal to support a woman, a leader in a war zone, and search about them, give them support as well, like support nurses and doctors, female doctors who are working in the war zone to secure their life, to empower them and give them like more power inside their workspace.